Today's topic is CADWorx 2013 webinar, part 1 of 3, new releases sneak peek. Our panelists today is Sonia Delgadillo. A quick reminder before we start, all our attendees are muted by default. So if you have any questions or comments, please type them in the questions tab. And with that, I would like to introduce Sonia.
Thank you, Alex. Can you hear me okay, Alex?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. Today's webinar is going to be one of 3 segments which we're going to try to go through and cover the recent changes in the latest version of CADWorx, which is CADWorx 2013. For the webinar, what we want to focus on is the things that give us easier design, faster design, okay, truly intelligent piping design with this new version of CADWorx Class 2013. This version brings a lot of changes to our piping design team. So let's go ahead and get started in talking about CLO. So first of all, we have these new components, which we're referring to. They're no longer just solids. The solids that exist today in CADWorx limit how much we can do to our model when it comes to modifying our components or piping design. These new components that come out with CADWorx 2013, we refer to them as self-aware components. These components are a little bit more flexible to allowing you to modify your existing model a lot faster, quickly, okay, and very intuitively. So if you can take a look at these components are self-aware because if I decide to move a piping system in one direction or another, it follows. Everything that's connected to that piping system will follow, okay, so we can move dynamically. There's a few things you can notice here. Some biggest maybe headaches for some of our piping designers is we had a fitting already on a line, and it was oriented the wrong direction. We have to delete it, okay, and we have to go in there and draw it again. Well, now, with this version of CADWorx, we can actually insert a fitting, for instance.
Sonia, I'm sorry. Can you speak up, please? Some of our listeners are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, I'm putting the mic closer to my face and trying to speak as loud as I can, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so if you take a look at this T that's here, what's going to speed up our design process is that we can insert a T, and then we can, as we're inserting a T, we can orient it the correct way without having to worry about setting our UCS and changing the component. And then after it's drawn, we can come back to this T, and then we can change its orientation, okay, without having to delete it and redraw it. So these self-aware components are going to bring a lot of benefits. It's going to allow our designers to model and modify the existing piping a lot more faster than they did before, okay? One more thing we're going to focus on just quickly is this new ability to change size and spec inside CADWorx 2013. Before, because they were just rudimentary solids, okay, just solids, period, we couldn't do many changes to the existing piping that the designers had modeled. With this new version of CADWorx, we're able to go in there and dynamically choose either manually or select an entire process line and tell CADWorx we want to change size or spec, okay? And it's literally very easy. So you can go in there and choose to change a size. And the only thing you as a piping designer needs to make sure is that in order for it to change quickly, intuitively, and correctly, just make sure you have those same components in the other spec or size that you're changing to. And everything will change as you want it to occur, okay? We'll notice in the command as we go through it in a few minutes that as I go in and I choose to change my size, I can go in there and I can also define what doesn't move. So the command gives our users the ability to control what size and also control the movement of the piping line, okay? So make sure you visit us on our next webinar because we'll focus a little bit more then on our next webinar on what the piping rules do, okay? for this webinar, what we're going to do is just cover, you're going to see some of the piping rules in action. And then the next webinar that we have, webinar 2 of 3, we'll make sure we cover all of the piping rules in depth. But there's many piping rules in CADWorx. And we'll talk a little bit more about these piping rules in the next webinar. But to kind of give you an idea of what these are, as you see here, they're basically configuration settings. What do I mean by that? It means you have the option of indicating every time I'm routing, do I want a weld gap to be inserted? If I have flanged components, do I want my bolts to come in? Do I want my gaskets to come in? Do I want my flanges to come in automatically every time I'm inserting a valve? These are what piping rules are. They're literally just options that allow you to turn them on, off, automatic in some cases, and in some cases you can prompt it, indicate that you want the software to prompt you what options you have access to. The routing in this release, thanks to the self-aware components, is a lot more intuitive. Okay, we've been expecting this type of advancement in our CADWorx software for a long time, and you're going to find this very time-saving, very easy to use. The routing now is a lot more intuitive because every time I'm routing, I no longer have to draw a line and then go back and then pipe it. As soon as I start drawing a component, I can start immediately piping. As soon as I go in there and draw a piece of pipe, I'm in the routing mode. If I want to go and connect to a nozzle on a piece of equipment, I can do that. And so what ends up happening with this new routing function, as we see here in this image on the right-hand side, I can literally indicate I want to go and connect to a nozzle on a piece of equipment. And it will give us a figure of what a box looks like, and we can choose a path. And then thanks to the intelligence that there is in the self-aware component, we can then still go back and change its orientation, the elevation, the distances on that routing line that has been automatically created for us. And then there's also a great advancement in our software as far as our specs go. And then we're going to focus a little bit more on the specs on the last webinar, on webinar 3 of 3. Okay, on the last webinar, we'll take a closer look into something called a branch table that is part of our CADWorx specification. Well, the branch tables that are new allow us to do what you see in the first figure in this slide. We have a new plus grip that appears on the pipe, and we can select those plus grips and indicate I want to go in and insert a branch connection. And then not only does it do that, allowing us to automatically go in there and indicate we want a branch to start, but as soon as we go in and we connect to another piece of pipe, it allows us to go in there and indicate what type of branch connection we want if it's classified in the specification. So we're going in there and routing, going from one pipe to another, intersecting perpendicular to a piece of pipe, and it's going in there and it's adding our connections for us automatically. Okay? One new option that we have in CADWorx is this enhanced mode. This enhanced mode is similar to what you're used to working with in CADWorx. In CADWorx today, we have a single line representation, we have a double line representation, and a solid representation, which is typically what we use in CADWorx today for modeling. We have a new one. Not only is it a solid representation, but it's an enhanced representation, okay, giving us a better depiction of what our components look like. So the image you see here, okay, you can also gain access to this. If you've gone through and filled out all the necessary information for that component in the data files, which are now cataloged, which is now basically stored in a catalog in CADWorx, okay? Just to kind of give you a brief overview here as to because we've done so many changes to our specs and our catalogs, we have a new interface for our spec editor. And our spec editor looks like this, and it has the feel of Office, so we're all accustomed to how to go where to make changes and how to use the application itself. The spec editor allows us to edit project files, which has all our specifications. It allows us to go in there also and edit catalogs, which stores our data files. Okay, and it's very similar to the specification editor we have today. The catalogs, again, like I mentioned before, store all the data files. And we'll get into a little bit more in depth as to what this chart means a little bit more on the webinar 3 of 3. But basically, the catalogs today store all our data files, and in the data files is where we can go and add the additional enhanced data so we can see the enhanced mode working. The specifications are now stored in project files that can be opened within the spec editor. And again, we'll take a little bit more time and focus on this subject specifically on the webinar 3 of 3. But specifically, our specifications work the same way as they did before, and even it even has more information and more options, okay, for us to store within our components. One of the biggest things is the branch table. We now have a branch table we can go in and set up for an individual specification. Okay, so now if we go, let's go ahead and end this slide for now. And what I would like to do is take you inside CADWorx. And some of you may be familiar with this model, and then also the routing that I do from this point here to this point here. So I'm just going to repeat the same process and show you the similarities between how we used to do it before and the new enhancements that you will get and gain from using CADWorx 2013. Before we get started, we do see that our spec editor, nothing has changed really, okay? What has changed is what's working in the background, okay? All those specs and catalogs and what they bring to us. Well, we can still have the ability of coming in here and setting our spec and coming here to the spec view palette and setting our sizes. But before you do this, what you need to do is go inside the setup, okay? The setup inside CADWorx is what has the most changes, okay? But it's very easy to follow, okay? So here we just basically see a preview of what our current settings are. Here we see the drawing modes that we're accustomed to seeing with addition to the enhanced mode, okay? And then as we model, we can see here that we have a compass that kind of follows our router. This compass allows us to quickly indicate if we're changing elevation, or if we want to go to a different elevation, okay, quickly. So if we go to the configuration settings, this configurations is the same section that used to be found in the Edit Config File button, okay? So nothing here has changed. If we want to go in here and make a certain change, we've even enhanced it a little bit so you can see the actual tooltip description or the properties for this one control here in the same screen. So if you want to change this, you can quickly come here to the pull downs and change it to the different variables. And if you need help, you can simply press the F1 key or press that help button to take you in the same way we did before to take you to the help guide to give you a little bit more information as to what all these settings are. All of these settings remain the same. Okay, they're the same settings that we have today in CADWorx 2012. Okay, except they're now located here in this new setup in this section. Okay, so here in the specification and size section, before all our specifications, if it's just one individual working, all our specs were always dumped in one location. If you were working for a project, then the project administrator saved certain specs and saved them per configuration project, and you only saw the specs that you needed. Well, in that same situation, okay, if you take that and you apply it to what you see here, you can see the similarities of what we're trying to do. Now all the new specs are located in one file called the project file. So you no longer have to put all the files on a network folder somewhere so everyone has access to it. Instead of sharing all those different files. You just share one file. You share the project file. Okay? So the project file contains all our specifications. Once a project file has been selected, and they're also found still in the same directory, in the spec directory, as part of your installation. Okay, so that spec folder you get when you install CADWorx, these project files are stored there. So again, you see only the project files, and within these project files are the specs that are available. So you no longer get hundreds of specs scattered everywhere. They're all located in one nice central location. We're still working with metric inch, with metric files, and of course our imperial inch units. Okay, so we still have the flexibility of choosing what type of units we want to work with when we start modeling inside CADWorx. So that all remains the same. The layers section, before we used to get to it through a button. This is the same concept. If we want to make a change, if we want to add a new one, you simply right-click and make the changes that you need. Okay. Now, piping rules. Again, we're going to focus this a little bit more in depth in our second webinar. But the piping rules, again, like I said, just as a quick summary, is they're settings that each user can control on his or her own machine individually without affecting the project settings that are found in the config file. So if a user, if a designer wants to set these on or off, if he has better ways of designing with them on or off, he can choose to define them as they want. Okay, they're not restricted to always having the same settings because they're set in the configuration file. These are set for your drawing for the one user's configuration for the one computer. So these can easily be changed to what you want them to be changed, whether they're turned on or off. For what I'm going to be using today, I just want to cover just a few highlights on the new version. So I'm going to highlight on how this size rule applies, just showing you and quickly talking about this new size rule. And then you're going to see a few changes take place. I'm going to go in there and start routing, and you'll see the flange rule work. And then again, we can answer questions in the end, or you can wait until our next webinar so you can get a little bit more information and more feel for what these piping rules really are. But again, you're going to see some of these piping rules, as you see here, are turned on already while I'm routing. Okay, so once, all you have to do here, just as before, to get started modeling inside CADWorx, all you have to do is set your spec. So nothing has changed. What you want to do when you first start modeling is you want to come here to the specification and size section and choose your project. Choose your project, and then here you can define your spec or your sizes, and you're ready to start modeling. When you choose your spec and your size in this section, this is the same thing as coming into your spec view palette and choosing it here. Okay, so there's no difference there. If we focus around this one pump here, CADWorx tells us, okay, this is a nominal pipe size of 3 inches. The specification that's being used is 150. I can come in and I can say, I want to draw a gasket, just as we did before. But look at what's going on. When I come in and I draw a gasket, it changed it from a 4-inch to a 3-inch. That's that piping rule I was talking about that a minute ago. And then if you pay close attention, one thing that we didn't have to do any longer was set our UCS to that line. Okay? This is the nice thing about having self-aware components. Again, our UCS can be anything. Okay? It can be anything. But when I start modeling, it understands the plane of that object and understands how to place it correctly. So again, I'm going to choose that gasket, and it aligns it correctly for us without having us have to worry about what orientation, what direction we were going to draw it in. Again, this is going to save us time. Okay, if we want to come in here and we want to drop in a flange, I can do so the same exact way. Okay, I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want to place a flange there. Look at what's happened. It's placed it automatically for me in the right direction. I no longer have to worry about my UCS. Okay, so this gives us a feel for how, you know, what great new changes this new version of CADWorx is bringing to us. So let's say I want to come in and draw a reducer. So look at this. We can see how the routing also works here with how we're inserting components. I'm going to come in here and insert this one component. This is a reducing component. Okay, it's flat on one side. I'm going to indicate I want the small end first, just as we did before. Okay, so I'm going to connect it. I simply press my space bar, it connects. And look at this. This is that compass I was talking about. This compass, without me having to set my UCS or anything, allows me to change the direction of where that flat side is going to go. And all I have to do is just drag and place it. Okay? So it's going to, so we're modeling the exact same way with some added benefits, okay? With some added time savers. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to place another flange. You know what? I need to come in here and just like we did before, we'll go ahead and say, okay, I want to insert a flange. It's going to be the butt weld in first, and it inserts it for me. Okay? I'm going to come in here and just take a look at something. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a valve. So let's just go ahead and choose the check valve. I'm going to come in here and say, okay, I want a check valve. And here we can see if we want to insert a check valve, you know, in the correct direction, or if you want to flip it, here's the moment to do this. You can say other end, and then it chooses the other end, and it drops it in. Basically, it moves our cursor from one point to the other extreme. So I'm just going to come in here and say, okay, I want to go ahead and place a gasket, and then I'm going to go ahead and insert that check valve that I had. So it inserts that check valve, and I want to go ahead and insert another flange. So it inserts the flange for me. You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to my piping, to my rules, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to go ahead and turn this on, and I'm going to say I want flange weld next. And I'm going to go ahead and insert this flange here. So look at that. It added our gasket for us automatically, our flange. I didn't have to worry about the orientation. It just did it for me. So now, if you remember, or if you're using CADWorx today, you know how the router works. First, you have to go in there and you have to specify you want the router, which is basically an AutoCAD 3D polyline. You indicate what distances you want to go. You use your point filter. Okay? You have to use a lot of commands within the command while it's executed to end in the correct place you want to go. Well, now with the new routing, remember I told you we can start routing off of any point? Well, I can come here and I can choose this plus sign, which initiates the routing function right away. I can start modeling right away if I want to, as you see here, and then I can even change elevations. If I want to change elevations, I can change the plane, and look at that. I don't have to execute anything. It just changes the plane for me. I can undo back to where I was. Okay, so it's working just like before. Check this out. If I want to go in and connect to that nozzle that's right there, all I have to do is right-click and say I want to connect, and I want to connect to this object. And it adds our gasket and our weld neck automatically. And then I can say I want this box to come up, this polyline. I want these polyline profiles to come up so I can indicate how I want to go ahead and draw my model, my pipeline. So I choose that, and you get this nice option to come up. And then all I have to do here is indicate which one pleases me, and then I hit enter and accept it. Okay? So again, this is going to save us a lot of time. It's a great advancement as to what we're doing today with the routing, because it's routing automatically for us. It's modeling the piping at the same time as we're telling it what direction to go. So it's no longer just a 3D polyline. Okay? Now, remember I was talking about those branch tables? Well, I can come in here and I can indicate I want to go ahead and I want a fitting here. I want a T to come in. So there it goes. I just select that sign and it lets me come in here and place that T automatically. And not only that, as I'm placing these fittings, look at what's happening. I can indicate what direction I want this fitting to go. I want this T not to go this way. I actually want to modify it. So I simply select it, grab that grip, and change the direction. Look at that. Okay, so this is a lot faster than having to go in there, delete the component, maybe fix the pipe, and then extend the pipe and then reinsert the component. So it's going to save us a lot. A lot of those little steps, they're going to be. You're going to see that there are a few little steps that you're getting rid of. That by the end of the day, those little steps become an hour of your work. Okay, so it's going to be a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more powerful here. So we can see, if I were to go in there and route from this location and just intercept perpendicular to this pipe, I can just simply indicate, okay, I want to go this distance here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I want to go from here. And I want to go this direction. That's not working for me. Just give me 1 second. Get rid of that key. I must have done something. So I'm just going to go there and I'm going to rotate it this way. And I'm going to indicate, okay, I want to go this direction and I want to go perpendicular to this line here. So you can see automatically that there's this OSNAP that comes up that indicates, okay, here I am going perpendicular to that pipe. So I'm going to go perpendicular to the pipe, and then what you're going to see as soon as this comes up are branch connections. Okay, these branch connections, if it's turned on, they're restricted to what you have set up in the specification. If not, it gives you all the branch possibilities for this one type of connection. So I can come in here and say I want a T and I want a standard T to come in, and it does that for us. So let's take a look at something else. So we've gone through the routing. We've explained the self-aware components. We've explained how the orientation now works with our components. We can easily go in there and rotate them. Two more things I want to show you before we end the webinar and go to questions are change size and change spec. And these two commands are commands that can be easily applied to your piping system. The commands are change size, okay, as you see here, and change spec. I can come in here and I can say automatically change the size. I select this line. I indicate I want it to become a 2-inch, and it gives me two options. It allows me to change just the fitting to a reducing fitting, or it allows me to add a reducing component, so I can keep that size T. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say change the component and change it to a reducing T. Okay? And the other one, again, if I want to indicate I want to keep that standard T and add a reducer, perhaps for any reason, then I can do that. If not, I can just change the component and say I want a reducing standard T. Okay? And then if I want to restrict my line not moving a certain direction, I can come in here and then select what it is that I don't want to be, what it is that I don't want moving. Okay? So there you see the size change. Okay, that command was change size, and we easily went in there and applied it. Now, one thing I do want to show you is that that line number that was applied to that entire piping system is still carried through this change. And the same thing applies for the change spec. Okay, I'm going to go through and I'm going to indicate I want to change a spec. Okay, and my line number will also update with making a simple change. So I'm going to say change spec. Change the spec. It's going to automatically, I just want to change these lines that are here, and I'll go to 600 pounds, and I'm going to hit enter to finish. And so it changes that spec for us, and it changes the line number for us. Okay, so all of these little simple changes that we're seeing are working 100%, and we're more than sure that you're going to really like them, and it's going to save us a lot of time. Let's take, for instance, here, just the insertion of an inline object. If we have an inline object we insert, okay, here we have these flanges. If we want to move them, look at this. I can just move them, place them anywhere it is that I want them to go. If I want to go across the T, I simply tab on over, and then I take it to where I want to place these components. And it always mends our piping system for us. Okay? The piping rules, as you'll see in the next webinar, if we want to come in and insert a valve system, I can insert the valve system. And not only does the valve that valve set come in by the valve come in by itself, but it comes in as a valve set. It comes in, insert the bolts if I have them on, the well gaps if I have them on, the gaskets, and those flanges that belong as part of that one valve. Now, to close the webinar and to go to before we go to questions, I do want to let you know that the Caesar 2 bidirectional, the PV Elite bidirectional still works. Everything is working exactly the same way. Isogen works the same way. So if I want to go ahead and send out to isogen, I can go ahead and use it the same way as we did before. Okay, so you choose these components, create an isometric drawing. Okay, so here we see our isometric drawing take place, our spec break, notation. So everything is working exactly the same way as it did before. Okay, thank you guys for attending, and let's take a few questions. I'm just now opening a few of these questions. I see some of them are flagged. Okay, so it says, does the one hole or two hole, this is a piping rule, run through isogen? No, it doesn't. This is just for a graphical representation. It works with the enhancement display. So no, it doesn't. Can the spec editor be disabled on a computer? That's a very good question. I believe, the spec editor is going to have to be viewed, read by everyone, not necessarily modified by everyone. So again, these would still apply. The changes that you would have to apply on the network administrator level, on the user profile level, are still the same. So if you want to restrict someone to not going in there and modifying the project, just don't give them any write access. Can I route to a nozzle that is referenced inside CADWorx? I haven't tested it, but it should be working. Okay, so the answer to that should be yes. So yes, it should be working. So yes, you can reference in a CADWorx equipment model and then type to it, and it should be able to apply that nozzle for you automatically, so you can route to it. What versions of CADWorx will this work in? All the versions of CADWorx we support are all those versions of AutoCAD that have not been retired by Autodesk. Okay, so as you guys are aware, every year Autodesk retires a certain version of AutoCAD. So for CADWorx 2013, it's going to be released at the end of the month. So we're going to be compatible, if I'm correct, with AutoCAD 2009, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. The release date is at the end of the month, so the release date is at the end of March. So at the end of March, this will be available to everyone. Some of these questions are incomplete. If you want to retype them in, it says, how can I set a gap for something? I'm not sure what this is applying to. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Can you keep the line number from changing? This is a very good question. I believe we should be able to keep that line number from changing. Let me just do something really quick. I think this will be this is good to show everyone. So right now it's set to dynamic. If it's set to static, you see how it's 150 right now. Let's take a look at. Let me just hide this question. So right now it's 150. If I want to come in and so it's set to 600. If I want to come in and change the spec, I'm going to say change spec back to 150, and let's see if it stays at 600. So these, I'm going to select this line, I'm going to go back to 150, and I want that to stay in place. So, okay, so we need to take a closer look at that. Okay, we'll make a note here that you guys want that setting, so you want to make sure you control that the line number doesn't change. Okay, so we can control it. So what we should do is just have it work similar to the line number setup. So if it says it's static, it should be set static. Okay, I don't think that's going to be a big issue or something that, so it'll be something easy to fix there or apply in the next release of CADWorx. What is a minimum version of AutoCAD we can work with? Again, we're compatible with the current releases of AutoCAD that are supported by Autodesk. So AutoCAD 2008 will not be compatible with CADWorx 2013. This is a good question. There's a question that says, can CADWorx 13 be installed on a machine with CADWorx 2012 or CADWorx 2010? Yes, you can. you can install CADWorx 2013 and CADWorx 2012. As a matter of fact, when CADWorx 2013 is released, you will have the option when it's installed to install either CADWorx 2012 version or this new CADWorx 2013 version. And when you install it, you can just define, just make sure that it's going to a different folder directory, and you should be able to run both versions fine for new installations of existing CADWorx versions that exist on the machine. Will CADWorx 2013 still work with existing AutoCAD 2010 models? We are expecting a new release to come out, I believe, in June. So in June, what we're going to be able to do, I'm going to answer a portion of this question here, is we're going to be able to import a model from existing versions of CADWorx and then update it basically to the enhanced typing that we are now working with. So we're going to be able to take your old models and update them, and then, but yes, you can still go in there and open CADWorx models, okay? And you're still going to be able to go in there and read the external data and use them. Okay? So you should still be able to open them and work with them as you want. Now you have to be careful that it's going to be new piping you're going to be working with, okay? So it's not going to be updated. But come June, you should be able to update those old solids, those older AutoCAD piping models to the new version. Let me see if there's any more questions here. When I refer to a project as a TRJ file, can they be applied across multiple projects as previous specs? Yes. Yes, it can. So you can go in and you can use one project for many different projects you're currently working on. Has there been any improvements in isogen 2013? I believe with this version of CADWorx, we are running the latest version of isogen. Okay, so you guys are going to be you are going to have that in the new version of CADWorx 2013. Our future development plans are for us to have the isogen work within CADWorx. Okay, so look forward to seeing something along those lines within us talking a little bit more about new changes with isogen for future development. Okay, so we've been asked another question here by someone. Can I route to an equipment, not an equipment nozzle, but a CADWorx nozzle? Well, if I get that correct, if I'm understanding that question correctly, when I'm routing and if I route to something that already has a flange, it'll just add the other flange that's missing and it'll let you route to it just fine. It also lets you route to the open components, meaning like if I have a cross, if I have an OLED, if I have a T, and if I want to go and route to that point, then it'll let me go in there and route to that point, and it'll give me a good connection to that fitting. The piping rules are not global. They can be applied by the user. So each user has the ability to go in there and control his or her own piping rules. No, we have a question here. Is this available for AutoCAD map? No, this only works for Windows. That's something that we can look at developing for the future. But it does not work with Mac computer. It works only with the Windows operating system. So if you install a Windows operating system on a Mac computer, it's a different partition, and it should work just fine. Will the new version recognize old fittings? Yes. I mean, you can bring in your old CADWorx models and you can pipe to it. Just remember, you're not going to have the same flexibility as the new components are newer. Okay, they're different from the existing CADWorx components we use today. Okay, there's a lot more questions. I believe what we'll do is take the rest of the questions offline, unless we want to continue. Elvira?
Yes. Sorry, Sonia. I had myself muted. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for all the questions. It's 10:40. It is a 30-minute webinar. We have more questions, but we'll probably go through them and we'll post some of the answers to our blog. Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Okay, bye-bye.